When I was 14 and rebellious, I felt like I was wasting my time in school. I hated school. Honestly, who doesn't? I felt out of place, I hated my environment, and I found the structure of it honestly quite boring. It's pretty cocky for a 14-year-old, right? So for the first time in my life, I took a decision that was completely outside of the norm, but made total sense to me. I dropped out of school. But I didn't drop out of school to sit at home and binge watch TV. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to make music. By that point, I had already been to like 10 schools as a result of moving around or having trouble adjusting, and I was always being labeled the new girl. Moving around so much at such a young age made me realize the concept of identity and labels. What do people judge you based on? How much control do we really have over that? There's a need to engage in the construction of a narrative when we meet someone new. This can be destructive because when put in a box, we suffocate. I want to try this, but I can't. I want to think like this, but I can't. I have to follow their projections of me, otherwise I will fail or be rejected. A presumed assumption of me is very common. People take a look at me or listen to my music, which is mostly in English, or they look at my pole dancing, and they decide certain things about who I am, where I come from, where I want to go. They put me in a box, and when they can't, they start asking a million questions to start feeding whatever image it is that they need to have of me, a narrative that might be familiar to them. And that's not really because people have bad intentions, but because that's how we, as a society, have been programmed to perceive and categorize people. I've rarely met anyone who doesn't have the same set of questions when we meet. When I was first approached to do this, I was told that the board was a little reserved about hosting me. See, they thought the people at this talk might not relate to me because I'm foreign. So when I asked where this university was and I was told Balamand in Kura, I quickly responded, ولو ما أنا من عندكم من سبعل. Let me explain. For English speakers, I come from a small village in the north of Lebanon with a tiny population of a few hundred people called Sab'al. I'm Lebanese, but I was also born in Puebla, Mexico. I'm also Mexican. Dropping out of school at 14 in a country where this was quite unheard of was definitely challenging. But it was me shifting my narrative. I needed to change my context, and so my plot thickened. So my empowered young self was off to London to study music. First day, I was so nervous, so scared. I was the youngest student in the college, but obviously I was walking around like I was the coolest thing ever. I probably told them some crazy story about how famous I am back home, i.e. singing in the shower. So we sit down at our desks in front of the teacher with a whiteboard behind her. Sounds pretty traditional, right? I mean, it looked different on the outside, but the structure seemed relatively familiar. Songwriting class started something like this. This is how you make a song sad, by using these set of chords. This is how you make a hit song, like a math equation, by using the 120 tempo and the 4-chord progression famously used by the Beatles and Elton John, originally derived from the blues. This was not at all what I expected. Formulas, boxes, one mold to fit into. I mean, I understand having general structure, but Bohemian Rhapsody was 6 minutes, and I'm pretty sure Lauryn Hill or Kanye West did not stick to a set of chord progressions. I always argued that it's not just about ticking boxes, but it's about where something comes from, the intention, the why, not just the how, not just this is how it's done. It's not just about taking their notes and applying it in the same way that it has already been applied a million times. Yes, I also hated music school. It made me more confused than I had ever been, and this particular chapter did not turn out the way that I had envisioned. I was crushed. Once again, I resided outside of the frame constructed for me. What music school did teach me was the structure that I needed to understand to be able to deconstruct. I needed to learn to unlearn, to come up with my own rules and my ever-changing guidelines. I'm pretty sure music school did work for some people, but for me, it just wasn't what I needed to become the artist that I wanted to become. So after music school, I started meeting all these people, these managers, booking agents, entertainment lawyers, and once again, they started telling me, this is the checklist that you need to tick to progress. You need to have this blog writing about you, you need to have this many followers, these are the steps that you need to take to progress. It was always much harder for me to get certain opportunities because people didn't really know how to categorize me. You're Mexican, Lebanese, but you sing original music in English and you live in Lebanon? How does that work? Maybe you should sing in Arabic. Maybe you should sing in Spanish. Maybe you should look more Arab to appeal to audiences easier. Maybe. But ironically, when the time came for them to reference artists that inspired them, those artists did not tick those boxes or follow their checklist. They were trailblazers and rule breakers that created their own path. So I just sat there like, oh, okay. So someone would need to be brave enough to go off on their own, outside of this mold, outside of this box, and once things worked out for them, then you can reference their story as a success. Made total sense to me. This was a reoccurring conflict. I was on my own again, and I needed to shape an individual journey that was true to who I wanted to become, and not who everybody else had previously become or who everybody wanted me to become. Too young, too old. Too thin, too fat. Too commercial, too alternative. Too local, not local enough. Your music is too hype, your music is too slow. Khalas. At some point in my songwriting process, I tried to fit that mold. I used the 120 BPM that I was instructed to use in class. I looped the beats and the pianos, and I was stopping myself from making any edits that came naturally to me, because I was always told that my music and my beats were not consistent enough. There's too many changes in the beat. It's not familiar enough. It's too experimental. But when I went off and made music that was steady enough, or slow enough, or commercial enough, or alternative enough, it was still never enough. So again, I realized I needed to start working on whatever came naturally to me, for me to be happy, since everything else just wasn't enough anyway. It's ironic because my successes now are things that used to be labeled as my flaws. Like with my first single, Jukebox, the beat was ever-changing. My creative process was completely uncensored. The song was so moody and inconsistent with a million beat changes.
It's official, I'm obsessed. It's official, I can't rest.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Jukebox was my first #1 single on iTunes. This song, along with all my other songs, was released completely independently, with no label, no marketing, no funding, and no backup whatsoever. Just my out-of-the-box ideas, paired up with a fan base that related to what I was saying because I was telling my own story in my own way. The chorus of Jukebox says, "I'm a jukebox, put a coin in me. I'm a jukebox, tell me what to sing." I was literally projecting my frustration about how I was always being told what to do, what to talk about, how to sing. So people related to that. It was one of my personal plots. Now, I've been talking about constructing narratives for a while now and how external pressures push you towards a certain path. But what does the purpose of a narrative serve? The purpose of a narrative is to define the character of whatever story is being told. So if we follow this logic, it seems pretty clear to me that taking control of your narrative is directly linked to freely expressing and defining yourself. The only way for any form of self-expression, music, or any kind of art to truly resonate with people is for it to be a true reflection of who you are, what you want to say, how you want to say it, focusing on what makes you different, awkward, even quirky. Those are also things that make you unique and what people relate to the most. Highlighting my uniqueness instead of trying to blend in all the time and disappear definitely took me a long way. So let's talk about identity for a minute. If we want to ask what identity typically is, we can be very systematic about it. We can think passports, driver's license, identification cards. What information is on these? Date and place of birth, a photograph, fingerprints, physical features? Those things, when combined, are designed to prove without a shadow of a doubt that the person holding the card is you. Your identity is what stops you from being identical to anyone else. Of course, in reality, identity is not always addressed in such a clinical and technical way. We also identify based on our allegiance to concepts like religious traditions, music, nationality, profession, sexual preference. And whether deliberately or not, there are those that try to instill their beliefs in you. They introduce you to taboos. They project their fears and prejudice onto you. In reality, you become yourself. It's important to remember that you're not born yourself. You don't magically wake up one day and find yourself like everybody expects us to. You become yourself. Becoming yourself is something you acquire. It's a series of choices, good and bad. It's the scenes and the plot. It's the conflict and resolutions that develop your character. In other words, your experience. It's the city you live in. In other words, your context or your setting. It's the characters you come across, choose to keep in your life, and those that fade away after serving their purpose. You may find others with the same characteristics or allegiances. You may share the same setting with other people, but the same exact combination of elements will never be encountered in anyone else. This is what makes you unique, and in my opinion, what needs to be celebrated unapologetically. Thank you.